The events unfold at the airport. Hundreds of people arrive and depart for various purposes, including leisure and business trips. Frank Dixon, the director of Customs and Border Control, found it strange that a group of students planned to visit Disneyland but didn't have a single video camera with them. It turned out that the young people had fake documents. Victor Navorski, like everyone else, presented his documents. Suddenly the officers asked him to come with them. Victor hardly speaks English, so when Officer Ray Thurman asked about the purpose of his visit to New York, he couldn't respond. Victor doesn't understand what's happening. The officer asked him to present his documents, after which he was taken to the office of the Director of Customs and Border Control. Frank Dixon explained that the authorities of Crocozia, the country where Victor lives, suspended the validity of their passports, so the U.S. Department of State invalidated his visa. It turned out that while Victor was flying on the plane, there was a military coup in his country, resulting in a change of power. At first Victor still didn't understand anything, so Frank had to resort to sign language to explain that a revolution had occurred in the country. Therefore, the documents of all citizens were deemed invalid. Now Victor is a stateless citizen. He is prohibited from leaving the airport building until the U.S. reestablishes diplomatic relations with Crocozia. It still hadn't dawned on Victor that his country no longer existed. Frank assured Victor that he would do everything possible to help him. Until then, Victor is forbidden to leave the airport premises. Ray Thurman showed Victor the international transit zone of the airport, where he is allowed to move freely. The officer also gave him a phone card with 15 minutes of talk time. When Victor saw the news on TV, he finally realized that his country no longer exists. Therefore, Victor doesn't exist from a legal standpoint. Of course, this plunged him into despair. As a native of a Slavic-speaking country, Victor can't even communicate with anyone. In panic, he lost his luggage. Continuing to watch the news on TV, Victor cried. He wanted to call home using the phone card given by the officer, but Victor couldn't make it work. No one helped him, everyone just walked by indifferently. While Victor was distracted, he dropped his meal vouchers. A janitor threw them away. Victor never managed to explain to the man that he wanted to retrieve his vouchers. Apart from Victor, there are other people sleeping at the airport. Victor had plans, but now he has no choice but to stay here. Of course, sleeping in such conditions is very uncomfortable. Victor decided to dismantle a few chairs to make an improvised bed for himself. Finding electrical panel, he turned off the annoying music and lights. Before sleeping, Victor prayed. He has no idea what awaits him in the future. Victor woke up in fear as another plane prepared for takeoff. He still hasn't gotten used to the absurd situation he's in. In the morning, Frank learned about his promotion. Once the official order is ready, he will take on the role of the head of airport security. The most important thing for him now is to successfully pass inspections. Frank started to work with double diligence. Suddenly he saw Victor walking around the terminal in his bathrobe through the surveillance camera. Victor used a public restroom to wash his face and clean himself up. After that, he attempted to get a visa again, but his passport was invalid. Victor has no idea what to do now. Frank is also unsure how to solve this problem. The Department of State has not responded to his request yet. Fearing for his career, Frank is determined to make sure Victor isn't here. If Victor escapes, it won't be his problem anymore. Later, Frank hinted to Victor that today during the security shift changeover at 12 o'clock, the entrance would not be guarded for 5 minutes. So no one would notice if Victor left. Of course, Frank had already arranged with the guards to carry out his devious plan. At some point, Victor was ready to escape, not realizing that Frank was watching him through the surveillance camera and preparing to call the police to arrest the illegal immigrant. However, in the end, Victor changed his mind, understanding that it wouldn't lead to anything good. Frank's plan failed. Some woman stumbled and broke her heel. Victor helped her. It turned out to be a flight attendant who was running late for her flight. Her boyfriend was waiting for her here. Gupta Rajan, the janitor, finds Victor's presence here suspicious and thinks he's CIA, sent here to keep an eye on everyone. Of course, the other employees consider the janitor's theory crazy. Victor can't even afford to buy food, so he decides to return lost carts to their places. He receives a small payment for this. That's how Victor earned a burger in one day. He hadn't eaten in a long time, so it wasn't enough for him. Victor continued searching for lost carts. This time he was able to order a full meal. The news reported that Crocozia had plunged into a severe economic crisis. People stand in lines all day to get a portion of food. Taking a couple of reference books from a bookstore, Victor learns English at night. During the day, the airport is bustling with activity, but Victor no longer notices anyone around him. Every day Victor tries to get a visa. Passport clerk Dolores Torres explained that it's impossible until the US recognizes his country. The food delivery guy witnessed their conversation. Frank and Ray also constantly spy on Victor. To push Victor into a new escape attempt, Frank assigned one of the guards to a fabricated position of baggage movement manager. Now Victor has lost his source of income. He has almost nothing to eat. Seeing the flight attendant again, Victor thought she was waving at him and waved back. But it turned out she saw her boyfriend. Gupta is hostile toward Victor, as are most airport employees. But Enrique Cruz, the food delivery guy, is an exception. The next morning, Enrique offered Victor a deal. If Victor helps him get Dolores Torres' attention, Enrique will provide him with food every day. Of course Victor agreed to the deal, but his attempt to tell Dolores about Enrique's affection for her ended in failure. But neither Victor nor Enrique intends to back down. The next day Victor, determined, approached Dolores and in broken English asked her what she likes. Victor managed to find out that Dolores is a fan of Star Trek. Enrique was thrilled because he is also a fan of the same cinematic universe. Victor continued getting to know Dolores better and passing on all the information to Enrique. It turns out that Dolores used to have a boyfriend whom she dated for 2 years. But she broke up with him due to his infidelity. One day Dolores directly asked Victor why he was inquiring about her hobbies and her past. Victor hinted that she had a secret admirer. Soon Frank summoned Victor to his office room. Frank planned to bribe him with food, unaware that Victor was already well fed. Without showing his confusion, Frank offered Victor a way out. According to Frank, if Victor asks for political asylum from the US, he will be able to legally stay in the country. The problem is that there are many similar cases in court, so he will have to wait for his turn for at least half a year. During this time, Victor would be allowed to stay in New York without hindrance. To make this work, Victor needs to convince the US authorities that he's afraid to return to his homeland. However, Victor didn't quite understand what was being discussed. He said he wasn't afraid to go back to Cracovia because that's his home. Seeing people slipping on the wet floor and falling, the janitor laughed. Victor doesn't understand what's amusing about it. Gupta said it's his only entertainment at work. Suddenly Victor overheard the flight attendant arguing with her boyfriend on the phone. It turned out her boyfriend is married and is planning to go to Rome for the weekend with his wife. Victor pretended to be on the phone to eavesdrop on the conversation. The woman was crying, and Victor offered her a paper napkin. The woman realized he had deliberately been eavesdropping and said that all men are liars. In the end, the flight attendant, who could no longer contain her emotions, decided to confide in Victor. She needed to get this burden off her chest. The woman hoped that someday she could be together with her lover, but apparently he had different plans. Only now did the woman realize that she had seen Victor before. He had helped her when she broke her heel. The flight attendant introduced herself as Amelia Warren and invited Victor to have dinner, not knowing that he wasn't allowed to leave the airport building. Disappointed, Amelia walked toward the exit. Gupta observed with interest as Victor tried to explain himself to her. Victor is determined to invite Amelia to dinner no matter what, but he needs to earn money for that. He tried to get jobs at various shops located within the airport building, but of course without documents and a permanent address, he was rejected everywhere. Victor was already losing hope, stuck in a foreign country without money and documents. This situation seemed hopeless. When Victor went to a secluded place, he noticed that repair work was being done here. In one night he made repairs out of nothing to do. In the morning, the builders, pleased with the result, offered him a job. Victor, who could hardly believe his luck, gladly agreed. Soon Victor joined the construction crew. Now he could afford to buy groceries and a few other things. In the evening after his shift, Victor noticed a note. It turned out to be from Enrique, inviting him to join their gathering. A customs officer named Mulroy seemed okay with Victor's company, but the janitor still considered him a spy. To ensure Victor didn't have any listening devices on him, the guys scanned him using the customs X-ray. After that, the company played cards for unclaimed luggage. Everyone had a great time. During the day, Victor continued hanging around the bookstore and learning English. Amelia noticed him and apologized for the previous time. She still doesn't know that Victor is a stateless person without citizenship. Amelia really likes Victor's unconventionality, so she invited him to a restaurant again. This time Victor agreed, but the problem is that he can't leave the building. Victor guesses that Amelia is still pursuing a relationship with her boyfriend. This love triangle hurts her. Ray informed Frank that an inspection would soon be conducted at the airport, which would determine whether he would be approved for the new position. Frank is aware that Victor is working with the construction crew and earning $19 per hour. It's clear that if Victor stays, Frank will have problems. However, he doesn't have any legal grounds to arrest Victor yet. Even the FBI couldn't help. Frank instructed the guards before the inspection. The authorized persons soon arrived and made sure Frank was doing his job well. Suddenly agitated Ray told Frank that they had trouble on the second floor. A passenger from Toronto, who had prohibited cargo, had caused a scandal when they tried to seize the medicine. Since the guy speaks the same language as Victor, Frank realized he couldn't handle it without assistance. Meanwhile, Frank was hiding. But when Frank asked him to be a translator, the man followed him. Frank wants Victor to calm down the unruly passenger. Speaking in his native language, Victor quickly relayed Frank's words to the guy, explaining that boarding the plane with prescription medication without proper documentation is not allowed. The guy in tears explained that the medication was for his sick father. Unfortunately, without a doctor's note, Frank couldn't let him board the plane to Canada. When the guy started acting aggressive again, the police restrained him. Unexpectedly, Victor said he misunderstood the guy. In reality, the medication is supposedly intended for animals. Of course, Frank figured out that Victor was trying to mislead him. Frank couldn't understand why Victor wanted to help a stranger. Realizing what was going on, the guy confirmed Victor's story that the medication was for animals. After that, he hugged his savior. Frank had no choice but to allow the passenger on the plane. Of course, Frank didn't like this and threatened Victor in front of everyone. Now, Victor Navorski had become a local legend. The janitor would tell everyone about his heroic deed. Victor was surprised that all the airport workers recognized him and greeted. Now Frank can forget about the promotion. His boss advised him to show more compassion towards people. Soon Victor knocked on Frank's office door and brought an unusual gift as a sign of reconciliation. Suddenly Frank asked Victor why he was going to New York. Victor simply replied that he was here to keep a promise. Frank too made a promise to him. From now on, he would do everything to make sure Victor never made it to New York. This is his revenge for the ruined career. While shaving in the public restroom, another employee who was doing the same said he felt as if he lived here. Later, Victor asked Mulroy and Enrique to help him escape the airport to meet Amelia at a restaurant. The janitor thinks it's a bad idea, because they could go to jail for aiding him. But the other guys are determined to help Victor. They have 3 weeks before Amelia returns from her flight. Victor wants to look presentable for the date with his dream girl, but he needs a suit. After getting the suit, he rehearsed his speech in front of the mirror for a long time. Victor is extremely nervous before meeting Amelia. To distract himself, he asked Gupta if he had ever been married. Gupta admitted that he has a wife and 2 children in India, whom he left 23 years ago. He had to flee the country due to breaking the law. Now Gupta can't go back home. Finally, Amelia stepped off the plane. Enrique, along with Gupta and Mulroy, intentionally blocked her way to make her cross paths with Victor. It all looked like a comical coincidence. A sweet conversation started between them. Victor finally gathered the courage and invited Amelia to dinner. However, not to a restaurant, but to the airport building's balcony. The friends helped Victor stage this performance. The atmosphere was very romantic, making Amelia feel embarrassed. Victor couldn't believe that Amelia was 39 years old. She looked much younger. Amelia has spent her whole life waiting for her lover to leave his wife and marry her. Every time she hears his phone call, she's ready to drop everything. She hates herself for it, but can't do anything about it. Apologizing to Victor, Amelia left. However, Victor followed her and finally confessed that he lives in the airport and waits for the day when he can finally go home. Waiting is what unites them. They talked for hours. Amelia was about to embark on another 13-day flight. Victor said he would wait for her here. As a farewell, she kissed him. Victor decided to prepare a special surprise for his beloved. The construction crew's foreman was baffled. Enrique wants to propose to Dolores and asks Victor to give her the ring. Of course he did, but Dolores wasn't ready to give an answer yet. A little later, she approached Enrique. Seeing the ring on her finger, Enrique understood that she agreed. The newlyweds held their wedding right in the airport. After the flight, Ray blocked Amelia's path and asked her to come with him, while Victor waited for her with a bouquet of flowers. Frank asked Amelia if she was familiar with Victor Navorski. Amelia still wasn't aware that Victor was a man without a country or citizenship, even though he had tried to tell her. Frank couldn't understand why Amelia fell in love with someone like Navorski. She told Frank that someone as insensitive as him wouldn't understand. Victor never waited for Amelia, but soon enough, she appeared with tears in her eyes and asked who he was. It turned out that Amelia broke up with her boyfriend to start anew, but now she was confused. To cheer her up, Victor showed her his surprise. All this time, he had been building a fountain for Amelia, but the mechanism got stuck. Victor also told her about his promise. He came to New York to fulfill a promise made to his father, who collected autographs from famous jazz musicians. He hadn't been able to get the last musician's autograph. That's why Victor came. Amelia listened to the story with tears in her eyes. In a burst of emotion, she kissed Victor. In the morning, the friends told Victor that the war in his country had ended. Everyone who loved Victor celebrated this event, genuinely happy for him. Amelia managed to obtain an urgent one-day visa for Victor. Now he could fulfill his promise. In that moment, Victor was truly happy. But something overshadowed his happiness. Amelia wouldn't go to New York with him because she had reconciled with her boyfriend. It was he who, using his influential connections in Washington, helped with the visa. It hurt Victor to watch Amelia walk away with someone else. When Victor provided Dolores with the visa, she regretfully said that the document had to be certified by Dixon first. It turned out that Frank was promoted after all. Now he wants Navorski to return to his country as soon as possible. However, Victor is determined to go to New York. Frank advised him to think it over carefully, otherwise he would fire and turn over to the police Molloy, Enrique and Gupta, who have repeatedly broken the law. Victor doesn't want his friends to suffer, so he's ready to leave today. The friends urged him not to give up. During this time, they had become like one family, so each of them was willing to take risks for him. However, Victor can't put them in danger and is waiting for his flight. Suddenly everyone gathered by the windows, seeing Gupta running towards the plane to delay the flight. Everyone was in shock, especially Frank. Gupta did it for his friend. The flight was postponed. Victor realized it was his chance, and along with Mulroy and Enrique headed for the exit. The news that Victor was planning to leave the airport caused a commotion. Everyone went out to see Victor off and give him gifts. However, at the exit, the guards blocked the path for Victor and his friends. Frank ordered Ray to arrest Victor, but Ray didn't obey, deciding to act humanely against the order. Frank couldn't believe it. Finally, Victor left the airport and breathed fresh air. Seeing him on the street, Amelia smiled. She's genuinely happy for him. Victor hailed a taxi. Frank didn't manage to intercept him. Victor has 2 hours before his visa expires. But that was enough for him to find the jazz musician Benny Golson and get his autograph. Victor fulfilled the promise made to his father. Now Victor can return home with a peaceful heart.